Hello, Morem here. Today I want to showcase you a minion-based Bone Spear Necromancer. Now, why are we picking minions here? Minions have a ton of benefits for us, namely spirit regeneration, additional body shields on the battlefield, and most importantly the feel of the Necromancer. I wanted specifically to build a character that feels and plays like a Necromancer and not like a scuffed mage with a more ethereal look to it. So, we have skeletons, we have a bone prison, we have corpse explosions, and we have the Bone Spear. Since we are playing a Bone Spear build, we are dealing tons of damage, and are basically not inferior to any other Bone Spear build. This makes this one incredibly strong, and this build can easily push 20 or even 25 levels above your character without any issues. You also don't need to worry about any enemies, like cold enchanted ones, because we are utilizing Bone Prison. And what better way to deal with them than to just imprison them and then nuke them. Bone Prison breaks the AI of most enemies in the game. You can just pop it down in a doorway and they will try to get to you, but they won't attack the Bone Prison for a few seconds, giving you a lot of room to basically nuke them. It also applies vulnerables, spawns a possible corpse, gives you a ton of essence and protects your own minions. Now, the minions we are utilizing are the Reaper ones that spawn corpses at the enemy's feet, and we are also going to use the Cold Mages, because the Cold Mages apply chill and they also regenerate our essence, so we don't need to rely on lucky hits. This makes this build interact with basically all the buttons you have on your skill bar. You constantly heal your minions, consume corpses, which procs a legendary node that buffs your damage. We constantly use corpse tendrils to activate the additional crit damage, crit chance, and the vulnerable buff. We stun enemies, we nuke them because they're grouped up. We also have our Bone Splinters, which regenerate our essence. We have the Bone Spear to nuke enemies. We have the Bone Prison to manipulate enemies' pathways and to make it much easier to deal with cold damage enemies. And Blood Mist is going to allow us to escape very bad situations. This build features a very rounded kit and is a ton of fun to play and interact with. So first I'm going to show you the build. Our minions on their own are not dealing that much damage. However, they are not really dying because we can heal them all the time because they spawn a ton of additional corpses through the Reaper. So we basically have them up all the time. Now, because we have them up all the time, we can benefit through this ring. And this gives us 5 essence per active minions. Because we combine this one with 2 additional aspects, one that increases our count for skeleton warriors by 2, and one that increases our count for the skeleton mages by 2, that's going to be around 50 essence. And 50 essence is a ton to get on your gear, which basically translates to additional 50% more damage. Because we are using the ossified essence keystone, which buffs our bone skill damage by 1% per essence point above 50 upon cast. Now, when we do get in a situation like this, we don't have any healing. However, you can use a scythe with life on kill, which will also heal your minions, or a helmet instead of the unique helmet here that has life on kill. I prefer the stat over the additional effect of the unique item, like Deathly Visage. So I highly recommend getting life on kill either on a helmet, on a rare helmet, or use a scythe instead of a two-handed sword. Next, I want to give you a few informations about the minions, because minions have a few special kinks to it. So minions have a lot of bugged stats, meaning they usually should inherit only 30% of your maximum attack speed, of your crit strike chance, and so on and so forth. However, they are buggy, and this also applies to the minion stats you can roll on your gear and get on the Paragon tree. This means this build focuses solely on the defensive options those minions provide. They are meat shields or skeleton shields for you, and they are also generating corpses as well as spirit force, making them also a very viable support option. Now, how do we deal with damage that makes our minions basically one-shot? We have multiple options for this. First is armor. Armor is inherited by our minions basically 100%, maybe it's 80, but it's a very high value, so they do receive a lot less damage because we have a lot more armor. This makes armor extremely valuable, double valuable for the Necromancer. The second thing we want to grab is in the Paragon Board. In this tree, the Cult Leader tree, we have those nodes here. Damage reduction for minions, 3 here and 1 rare here. So this node gives you basically around 60 to 70% damage reduction for your minions, which is huge. So this one is incredibly busted for minions. So that's the sacrificial glyph right here. This buffs the value of the magic nodes. And the third thing is in the skill tree. The third thing in the skill tree is right here. Death's Defense. Our minions cannot receive more than 30% of their maximum life from a single damage instance. This one is the most essential node for minion builds. Without this node, our minions get one-shot constantly. Without this node, we cannot do Uberlilith. Without this node, we cannot do basically any high-level content because our minions are getting one-shot. And our additional defensive layer is going to be dodge chance because our minions cannot get unstoppable. So the only way to prevent them from getting Change's Heat is them dodging, because they can, for some reason, dodge while they are frozen or stunned. And dodge chance is getting inherited by them 1-to-1, so, or around 1-to-1. So you want dodge chance on your boots. Dodge chance is also very beneficial to you. So those are the defensive layers for the minions that make minions function. And how do you make your minions attack? Very easy. You need to take action first. There are 3 layers, so the passive one, like right now, they won't do anything. They're just standing around and basically die, live, whatever. They're skeletons. The next layer is when you get attacked. Some of them will try to like look in the general direction, but won't really attack. They'll maybe throw a pebble or something, but they won't do anything substantial. And the third one is when you attack. This gives them the command to strike them down. What you want to do while gaming is you go to the edge of the screen, see enemies, throw your bone spear and then back off. Your minions will then exchange the positions from the back line to the front line and attack an enemy, and you can chill in the background while your minions are getting clobbered. Next, let's talk about the aspects. For the helmet, you can go with the Deathly Visage. However, I do not recommend this. A much better option for this is move your skeletons from the boots to the helmet, which will open up a boot slot, which we can then use to use Wind Striker, which gives us additional movement speed, which we are lacking on the Necromancer. We do not have a mobility ability, which makes this class incredibly slow. For your gloves, you can go with either the Coldbringer aspect, which gives our skeleton mages a Blizzard ability, which is quite nice because it chills continuously every enemy in the battlefield and will crowd control them, which we benefit through a glyph we will be grabbing later, not level 80 but level 90, that gives us additional damage versus crowd controlled enemies. It will also make enemies susceptible to freezing. On the pants, go for the Disobedience one. Disobedience is incredibly OP, it gives you more armor, and armor is extremely good in high end game and, well, throughout the whole game. Each armor point you get is getting more value and more value the more you have, meaning armor is more valuable the more you have. For the boots, if you are running the Death Visage, go for Skeleton Warriors on those, but if you're not, go for the Wind Striker. For your weapon, go with the Splintering aspect. The Splintering aspect will make your Bone Spear apply vulnerable and will make your Bone Shards deal a ton more damage to vulnerable targets. Bone Shards are the projectiles that boomerang back to you after the initial Bone Spear breaks. For your amulet, go for Grasping Veins. Grasping Veins gives you a ton of additional critical strike chance when you consume a corpse with the Corpse Tendrils ability. Through a variety of means, the Corpse Tendrils ability has a very low cooldown, so we have nearly 100% uptime on this one. And when we hit an enemy with the Corpse Tendrils, we get a 90% more damage multiplier to critical strike damage. So this one is extremely strong, especially in this build, because we spawn additional corpses with our Corpse Reapers, and those corpses can be consumed to either heal your skeletons or to consume them with Corpse Tendrils, and we also get additional buffs later on through a legendary node we can get on the Paragon Boards. For the next aspect, we want the Requiem one. This will give you additional maximum essence per active minions. We have 5 Skeleton Mages and 6 Skeleton Warriors, which results in 55 additional essence at the max roll. This is extremely strong on this build, which basically means 55% more damage. And on the second ring, we want the Serration aspect, which gives us additional critical strike damage above 50 essence. Next, I will go over the Book of the Damned. For the Skeleton Warriors, we go for the Reapers, because we have a 50% chance to carve flesh off of an enemy, which spawns a corpse. For the Skeleton Mages, we go with the Cold Mages with the first node. This will make the Cold Mages regenerate essence with their primary attacks. So when they attack an enemy, we get essence back. This helps immensely with our essence sustain. And for the Golem, we just sacrifice this one for 30% more crit strike damage. Next, I want to talk about the stat priority on your gear. For the helmet, go with total armor, maximum essence, life on kill if you do not use a scythe. If you use a scythe, go for intelligence, willpower or dexterity to flesh out your Paragon Board. And for the last stat, go for life, maximum life. On your chest, go for damage reduction versus distant, damage reduction versus close, total armor and damage reduction flat. On your gloves, go for crit strike chance, attack speed, ranks the Bone Spear, and for the last one you can go for damage versus injured, which is a quite substantial amount of additional damage. However, the other option is crit damage with bone skills, which comes around to basically the same DPS output. This has to do with the hefty amount of both stats we get on basically every other piece of our character. The Paragon boards as well as other gear pieces. For the pants, go for damage reduction versus close and distant, then for total armor, and then you have damage reduction versus injured. Damage reduction versus injured can go up to 43%. When you stack this one with another instance of the same affix, you're going to have a 75% damage reduction when below 35% health. You're going to basically quadruple that health pool because you're receiving less damage, a ton of less damage. On our boots, we want movement speed, ranks to corpse tendrils. The ranks to corpse tendrils make our corpse tendrils come off cooldown much faster, so we want at least that. Then we want dodge chance against ranged enemies. This one gets inherited by your minions, so it makes you tankier and it makes your minions tankier. And for the last one, I prefer a stat because we are lacking stats for the Paragon board, so having willpower, intelligence or dexterity on them is very, very nice to have. For your amulet, go for movement speed because we lack movement speed. Then ranks to compound fracture is not the best. I have it on my gear currently because it's easier to roll, but you actually want to grab this node, Evulsion, because this one gives you 6% additional more multiplier on critical strike damage versus vulnerable enemies, and this one only increases the damage by 5% after critting 10 times with our bone skills. So it is strictly better to go with Evulsion. The other two stats should be essence cost reduction and then movement speed on lead kill or damage reduction while injured. I personally prefer damage reduction while injured because it's such a good stat. So having 3 of those on your gear will make you basically immortal when you get to low life. For your rings, it's incredibly hard to roll good rings on the Necromancer. So the 3 stats you want to look out for are critical strike chance, then vulnerable damage, and as a third, maximum essence. The last stat you want to grab on the rings is life, maximum life, to make you tankier. But it's incredibly hard to find those rings. We do not utilize any lucky hits, so we don't roll a lucky hit on our gear. This leaves us a bit more room for other affixes. And here is another ring that's relatively good. It has crit strike chance, crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, and damage to distant enemies. Not the perfect one, but it serves its purpose, and it's incredibly hard to find an ancestral ring with those stats, so I am currently using a sacred one. And lastly, the weapon. For the weapon you want vulnerable damage, crit strike damage with bone skills, and as the last stat, intelligence or core skill damage. Both are fine, both will boost your damage immensely. As for the base weapon, go with a two-handed sword for more crit strike damage, or if you do not have life on kill on your helmet, go with a scythe. This will boost your survivability by such a high amount. It's one of the best stats to get. Here is an example for a scythe, life on kill. So grab this one instead of the two-handed sword if you do not have life on kill on your helmet. Next I will go over the skill tree. This one is going to be very brief. So we pick up bone splinters with the enhanced bone splinters and the accurate bone splinters. So this one is strictly for essence generation in between. So you throw your bone spear and then you throw those in between to generate a little bit of essence. In the next 3 we max out bone spear. We can get 9 ranks in this one. I have only 3 because my gloves are not maxed. We get enhanced bone spear, and then it depends on what you have on your gear. If you have the splintering aspect right here, you don't need the upper node like this one, the supernatural bone spear, because you apply vulnerable anyway. However, if you do not have the splintering aspect, you want to get the supernatural bone spear. Next, grab unliving energy, then imperfectly balanced, then hood flash for a chance to spawn corpses. It's not that good, but for single target fights it's okay, especially versus bosses where it's doubled. We have a very high lucky hit chance on our bone spear, so we spawn corpses regularly, which then makes us able to use our corpse tendrils, which is quite a huge amount of additional damage. In the next 3 we want to pick Blood Mist for 1 point. This gives us immune, basically unstoppable, so we can't CC'd, we press this button and can get out. Has a very lengthy cooldown, so make sure you are standing back instead of just in the front line to save this one for whenever you really need it. Next we pick up Bone Prison with the enhanced Bone Prison, which gives us additional essence whenever we trap enemies. And then we pick Ghastly Bone Spirit for another instance of vulnerable. And we need to apply vulnerable before the splinters of the Bone Spear hit, because those will then deal 250% or 225% additional more damage, which boosts the damage immensely. Next, depending on your essence issues, you can get 3 points in this one, Grim Harvest, instead of 1 point and 2 points in Fueled Death. I personally prefer just 1 point because I don't have any essence issues. and the 2 points here give us 6% more damage, which is quite nice. We then pick up Skeleton Warrior, because our Skeleton Warriors need a little bit more life, so those really help. And we also get in the next one Skeleton Mage, which is 60% more life for our Skeleton Mages. And Death's Reach for 12% more damage to distant enemies. In the next one, we pick up Corpse Tendrils, max this one for cooldown reduction, grab Enhanced Corpse Tendrils, and then Plagued Corpse Tendrils, which gives us another instance of vulnerable application whenever we use our Corpse Tendrils. Then get Serration, Compound Fracture, and Evulsion. 2 of those are more multipliers, so Compound Fracture and Evulsion, and this one buffs our base crit chance with our bone skills depending on the essence we have upon cast. This means the more essence we have, the better this node becomes. In the ultimate cluster, we want to pick up Bonded Essence as well as Death's Defense. Death's Defense is basically essential to keep our minions alive, and Bonded in Essence gives us an additional heal with our Skeletal Priest, which is quite nice to keep our minions alive longer. And for the Keystone, we pick Ossified Essence, which gives us a more multiplier based on the essence we have upon casting our bone skills. Meaning if we have 220 essence, we get 170% more damage with our bone skills. The less we have, the worse it gets. So you want to shuffle your essence regeneration in between to replenish your essence pool. Next, let's go over the Paragon Board. For the starter board, we are going to pick the Gravekeeper's Node. The Gravekeeper's Node is giving us more damage depending on the corpses, the close corpses we have in the fight. This is a substantial amount of damage because sometimes corpses spawn near us, so this one buffs our damage. However, we picked this one for the rare bonus. The rare bonus for the node Preservation gives us armor and intelligence, and the knowledge one gives us increased damage and intelligence. So this one is quite powerful for very little points. If you get this one to the 15 rank, you can drop those 2 points here. So the willpower and the dexterity, and grab this point here, the 7 dexterity here, which will then fill up the requirements for the additional more damage multiplier on close corpses. So you save 1 point when you get this one to 15. The next board is going to be Bone Graft. You basically beeline this one to get Bone Graft. Then you beeline here to get Reinvigorate, which gives us maximum essence and essence on skill. Then we unlock this board very early because we want a lot of rare nodes here. Ruin, we want Deathbringer, we want Death Marked, we want Preservation. All of those are very strong nodes, rare nodes specifically, that have a very high threshold if we do not unlock this one first. Because it doesn't matter how many boards you have, if you unlock this one first, this one has the lowest requirements for the unlocks for the rare nodes. This board is the Scent of Death board. Next we path through here to the Exploit Glyph. We want this one because this one is a vulnerable multiplier. This one is also based on dexterity and we get a ton of dexterity in this specific board. Then we path through here and unlock the Cult Leader board. For the Cult Leader board we path here, so we need to rotate this board 1 time to this glyph socket. For this one we have Sacrificial in here. I know the bonus on this one is not substantial at all because we have minions active all the time, so the 10% more damage is basically only applicable when we do not have any minions, so when all of them die. But it's better than the other option, and the magic nodes in range will get buffed, and we want that because the damage reduction from those is very good. So those damage reduction nodes are specifically to make our minions survive. We unlock this one and then we move on to the next board. We path through here and unlock the Essence glyph slot on the Bloodbath Paragon board. It gives us critical strike damage with our core skills as well as 22% more damage while enemies are not healthy. At around 80, you should focus on filling up those boards because those boards give you a ton of additional damage. So level those up, especially the Sacrificial one to get access to those 2 nodes, but the Exploit one, the Sacrificial glyph as well as the Essence glyph should be around level 15 when you get to level 80. It's not that important to grab the Gravekeeper to level 15 at this point, but I currently have it at 14, so I'm only 1 point off, 1 dungeon off, and I could save basically 1 point with this one. So after you get to 80, this should be your board. So you path through here, grab the Flesh Eater board afterwards, and this should be your focus next. You path through here, grab the Stifle for damage versus injured and critical strike damage. You path through here, get the Flesh Eater. The Flesh Eater gives you 40% more damage for 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. We consume corpses all the time through minion heals, through corpse tendrils. So both of those are very, very nice to proc this one. So this one is up basically all the time once we get this. Next we fill up this board. We path through here, grab damage to healthy and crit strike damage. Path through here, unlock the Scent of Death node. Now this one will possibly only give you the damage reduction, but sometimes you do not have any corpses, especially when you start the fight, so you have more base damage with this one. So that's basically 50% more burst damage when you start the fight. Then you path through here and grab the glyphs locket here. And the glyph you want to use in this one is the control one. Control gives you increased damage to crowd controlled enemies. We have our chill mages, our cold mages. Those will chill with their primary attacks, but we are also using the blizzard they cast. However, as far as I know, those do not stack. It's instead written right here. So this one is either 10% or 20%. It's still 20% more damage on bosses if they get crowd controlled. And sometimes enemies do get frozen or stunned with the corpse tendrils. So this one is quite substantial. We can then grab preservation as well as death marked for additional damage. And to finish up this board, we get corrective. Next, we just fill up other parts of the board. There is tenacity here and a ton of armor nodes and stray nodes, like for example the crit damage here. I have a planner down below with the best stats on the gear, with the right aspects, and a 60, 70, 80, 90 and 100 board, so you can plan your progression accordingly. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like. If you have any questions, make sure to comment down below. If you want more of my content, please subscribe. And if you want to support me more, join my membership or just donate if you want to. Also make sure to check out the live stream. I have been grinding with this specific build yesterday, so I have an extended VOD up on the channel with extended gameplay if you want to have a look at this. See you next time and bye.